75. I'm your host, Blain Pudvey, and I'm joined by my co-host, Matt Smith.
Good evening.
And Trege Wilson.
What's up?
So we had a bit of a layoff. Been a couple of weeks.
Preseason layoff.
Yeah. It couldn't be helped with Treg doing his shows and Matt and I traveling all over for work. Just couldn't get us together for a show. But here we are now.
Good to be back. Good to have everybody back.
Yes. And Treg, you look like you're a little bit weighed down there around the neck. Is that a couple of gold medals you got there?
I did get a couple gold medals. I didn't think we could talk about that, but yeah, I won at the Nova Scotia Open. I won first in my class, and I won first in men's masters, and I was second overall for men's physique.
Was the prize a razor so you can get rid of that pedo stash?
No, I just got this. This is if anyone follows bodybuilding, go look up C-Bum, who's Mr. Olympia for classic bodybuilding. And I'm going with the C-Bum stash for the Flex Lewis this weekend, the Flex Lewis Canadian Classic. So we'll see how that goes. We'll see how it goes.
Is the competition held at a school?
Technically, yes. So it's at the Riverview. It's in Riverview, and it's at the Riverview, whatever the theater is called. I forget now, but
I grew up 20 minutes from Riverview, so maybe I'll tell my mom to come down and like cheer you on or something.
So it apparently they're Jesus, I'm so sorry. I've been on 3 weeks of prep at a huge calorie deficit, so my mind I forget the name of the venue anyway. It's a school in Riverview, and they have a big theater, like with seats and all that in it. It's like the Spats Theater at Citadel High here in Halifax,
Yeah.
which was my last show. So
You're probably just
so
going
yes,
to you're probably just going to Riverview High.
sure,
Probably.
whatever you say, Matt. You know more than I do. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I'll tell my mom to come down and take pictures and cheer you on and everything.
Riverview Art Center, it's called,
Okay.
Which is 400 White Pine Road in Riverview.
Okay.
So if anyone wants to go and cheer Treg on or protest his involvement with his mustache, that's where you go.
Yeah. Or if you want to sit at home and watch it for $30, you can watch the pay-per-view.
Okay.
I wouldn't spend my money on it, but I'm just saying if you want to. If
I wanted to see you shirtless, I would just go onto your social media.
Just go on to Instagram. That's all you got to do.
Oh God. All right. So without further ado, the season's about to begin. As we record, it is Tuesday the 10th. The NHL has opened. I was just watching Nashville and Tampa Bay. It was 1-1 when I came down to record. So yeah, the season's begun. The Canadiens play tomorrow against the Leafs. And they've released the roster. So we'll talk a little bit about the roster. We'll talk about everything, all the drama around that. What we think will be a good, successful season. We'll talk about players who should have made it, didn't make it, shouldn't have made it, did make it, and call-ups and whatnot. So why don't we just start it off with the roster? Well, we can go line by line. We'll start with the starting five. According to the Canadiens' latest host for their line rushes anyway, Caulfield, Suzuki, and Anderson are the forward line, and Matheson and Savard are the defensive line, with Allen starting in net against the Leafs. So let's start with that top line, Caulfield, Suzuki, Anderson. I've been hearing a lot of people upset about Anderson being placed there, but there is a good reason. Treg, you were talking about it before the show.
He plays well against Toronto. Like every game we play against Toronto, whether it be preseason or regular season, he seems to get a goal or two, and he plays hard and goes hard. I agree. I don't care for Anderson to be on that line permanently because I don't think he works very well with Caulfield and Suzuki. But against Toronto, the more ice time you can give Anderson, I think the better, because he seems to be a Toronto killer. He seems to always play well against Toronto. So that's why he's there. I think we can put to bed the fact that I don't see Kirby Dach playing with them this season, unless they really need offense and the game's getting late or something. They might throw them together at the end of a game, but I don't see. I think Dach has that permanent second line center gig from now on.
But you, Matt,
So.
what did you see out of that line?
I would agree with Trege's statement that Anderson is leaf killer. He really is. He's one of their better players when they play the Maple Leafs for some reason. But when I'm looking at the preseason, I thought that Anderson was one of their best players. He was consistent. He was giving it his all, really. And I don't think that I don't disagree that they started him there, and it might not just be for one game. Who knows? They did try multiple people during the preseason. They tried Newhook, they tried Monahan, Harvey Pinard, Anderson, etc. I'm going to say it's the first game of the season. Let's see how it goes. There's going to be some shuffling in there. What I would like to see is some consistency in lines this year. But I do agree with Trege that I think it kind of puts to bed the whole Dach situation, unless it's maybe towards the end of a game or something and they just need to throw a bunch of offense on the line. We know that they play well together, but I think it's St. Louis' plan and the Canadiens' plan to have Dach center his own line. Whether that's going to be with another center on a wing, well, I guess we'll see. But as of right now, you've got Suzuki, who's one of the most consistent players that the Canadiens have. Caulfield just signed a big extension. He's going to be looking for the next step in his career. He's on a 46 goal pace last year prior to his shoulder injury. And talking about the defensive pair, I don't think there's any surprise there with Matheson Savard. Matheson was on a 61 point pace before or when he came back from his injury, and Savard is kind of that stay-at-home defenseman that every team looks for. So he might be playing out of position, obviously being a top line guy with the Canadiens, but he's, as of right now, he's their best option to play on the right side.
Well, I think Savard. Oh, sorry, Blain, go ahead.
No, I was going to go on to Anderson. Over the last few days, St. Louis has been talking to the press. He's been on Schaum. He's had press conferences, and he has continuously brought Anderson up, mentioning how he is starting to understand how to use his speed. I mean, he's always been big, fast, no problems there, but now he's learning how to apply his speed in situational ways.
When to
so
turn
that
it
could work better. Yeah, and it could work better with Suzuki and Caulfield if that's what he's doing. Instead of just speeding up and down the right side of the ice, between the goalpost and the boards, maybe he kind of weaves in and out a little bit and he can use that speed. We'll see on that. Caulfield, Suzuki, I think they're going to go with duos. I think that's what's going to happen. We're going to see duos. We're going to see Caulfield, Suzuki, Dach, Newhook, Monahan, and I don't know. Well, right now they got him with Pearson, but Monahan and whoever. Fourth line is just a rotation of whatever's there.
I think you're going to see, besides Suzuki, Caulfield, Newhook, Dach, I think you're going to see a rotation of everybody else kind of playing up in the top six. You'll see if Slafkovsky goes up there with Dach and he plays well, he'll stay. Maybe he'll move up with Suzuki and Caulfield for a game or two. I think you'll see Monahan play up on the wing, I think maybe with either the first or second line, Harvey Pinard. I wouldn't actually mind seeing Jesse Yolanden get a chance in the top six. He has a hell of a shot on him. Yeah. He's a good heads-up player. I didn't think he had a great preseason. But then again, besides Suzuki, Caulfield, and Anderson and Slafkovsky, I didn't think anyone really had a great preseason. So, there's a lot of people that we have to look at this year that I think will be fighting for a job next year, like Jake Evans, Yolonen, Tanner Pearson, guys like that. David Savard. I was just gonna say earlier about Savard. Savard right now is the only option as the top right-handed defenseman until someone can step up and take that spot away from him. Right now, it's really just Kovacevic because I don't see Barron taking that huge step. Kovacevic is consistent enough that maybe you could see him move up there with Matheson. But I think Savard basically is there, and Matt kind of hinted on it. This allows Matheson's offense just to go. Like Savard, it's like a poor man's Subban Markov. And I say poor man because Savard is nowhere near a Markov. Like Matheson can go do his thing, and you have this steady stay-at-home guy is going to be like, I'm not pinching in. I'm not I'm not going anywhere near that. Although he did a few times in the preseason. So that's how I think that's going to work. And I would be shocked as far as gone by the trade deadline to be or an off-season move like they did with Joel Edmondson. And you'll see him gone to a team before his contract's over. Just so you can get Mayu and because I think Mayu and Reinbacher by the end of the year will be up with the team regardless.
Yeah, we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah.
I'd like to stay with the forward lines here. I agree. Like some of these guys, I don't see several of them with the team next year. Like Pearson, Monahan, definitely are going to be gone. Harvey Pinard, Evans, I think are going to be kind of bubble players. Gallagher, well, see, here's the thing. I love Gallagher, but this team needs somebody to step over top of him, and you don't put $6.5 million on your fourth line. So either he gets injured again and he decides to just play out the LTIR like Price, or they find someone to take him on so he has a chance to win somewhere else.
You could buy him out as well. I mean, it's going to cost you $2.5 million for the next 6 years. But if the salary cap's going to keep increasing, that 2.5 is not going to look all that bad, especially with Edmondson.
Still 2.5.
I know. I'm just throwing it, and I don't see Montreal really buying him out. I just don't know who's going to take the contract. If he can get 20 goals this year, it might be easier for him to be moved.
As a team that's actually contending and they're willing to give they want to move some dead weight off their roster and bring a guy like that in for say their third line, sure.
Yeah, but like I say, he has to show he can score 20 goals.
Yeah,
because
at least close to it.
If he can't, then I mean, in retrospect, I know why Gallagher was paid the $6.5 million.
He earned it.
However, the season before he got the $6.5 million, he didn't have a very good season. Bergevin loved him. He actually cried at the press conference when he announced it. And he got the money for Hart. At the time, no one really argued it because he was dealing with injuries, but he was a multiple 30-goal scorer. However, in hindsight, it was a disaster of a contract.
I think it's really the last messy contract to deal with because they waived Armia, which I thought was a fairly bold move considering the cap implications of it. Like he clearly didn't earn a spot, and they telegraphed to the whole team, hey, if you don't play well, you don't stay. We don't care who you are. But that's a lot of money to be sitting there dead on the cap.
Well, with him and Laval, you'd save 1.15 million of that 3.5. So
that's still over 2 million.
It's still over 2 million. What's he got? 2 years left, Armia?
No, this year and next.
It'll be interesting to see what happens. He may say, screw you guys, I'm not going to Laval. And maybe they can terminate his contract somehow. I don't know how that works.
It'd have to be mutual between the two parties.
Mutual, and maybe he goes to Europe or something.
Yeah,
I don't know.
He would have to be put on. I think I don't know if he would have to go on waivers again for like a termination, right?
Yeah.
But he would still have to pass through for contract termination, everything like that. That might be the best thing for team and player, but at the same time, I can't see him walking away from that kind of money. As chances are he's never going to see that kind of money again.
Zadina did it.
Zadina did do it, yeah. Yeah.
So that it's a possibility, but there's also a possibility that there could be a trade in the works where another team has waived a heavy contract that'll clear, and then they can just swap the two.
Zadina also took like a show me contract. He's not making over $3 million, right?
No.
So chances
he chose to forego the money and go for the show me.
Yeah. I mean, Armia didn't even look like he cared in the preseason.
Yeah. The only thing that's good about him going there is they've got so many young players and so many players that don't have that veteran clause on their contract. They don't need to worry about sitting a veteran all the time, because other than guys like Gabriel Bork and Armia and Philip Maillet and there's a couple other ones, they don't have to sit them.
Right? Pocket Bisson. He's another one.
And Lias Anderson. They don't have to sit them. Yeah. So everyone can just play, and they don't have to worry about this guy's out of the lineup, this guy's in the lineup, etc.
Well, I mean, Jeff Hood said it when Armia cleared. He said he was going to give him a couple of days to kind of cool off, because you've been in the NHL for as long as he had. Getting waived, I'm sure, was not a good experience.
Of course not.
So, let him cool off for a bit, then have a discussion. This could be positive. He goes down there. He shows that he can be a leader. He shows that he can play the way he did before. And somebody gets some interest in him and they can move him. Or, he just plays out his contract in the minors, or they decide to terminate or whatever. But
I hope
if he goes down there with the right attitude, I think it'll work out better for him in the long run.
I hope he does it like Alzner did. Alzner kind of went there with the right attitude, and he took it by the horns, and he became a leader on the team. And then Montreal eventually bought him out. But I don't know. No one's really said how Armia took it. Technically, he's still on the roster. He only has one more season left after this one, so they could buy him out next season. But then you're paying what, $1.7 million per year for the next 2 years.
Yeah. Like that.
Or hopefully he just stays in Laval for 2 years, or someone, like you said, someone picks up his 3.4 for 1 year next year, and off he goes. But I don't know if we want to get into that. But technically, Joel Armia is still on the NHL roster. Technically.
Until tomorrow, anyway.
Until tomorrow, yeah.
When they're going to want to start doing the paper moves, because right now Jack Eye's not on the roster.
Correct.
But I can't see him not being on the roster in Toronto for opening night. I see him there.
Well, okay, if you really look at the reasoning for all this, it has to do with Dvorak's LTI, long-term injury reserve. So Dvorak technically went on LTIR in the off-season, which means you have to get as close to his total value as possible, or you lose out on money. So Joe Armia was waived. He went through waivers. That means he can either play for Montreal or Laval without having to go through waivers again. I think it's for 10 games in 30 days. 10 games or 30 days. So Jack Eye, who's waiver exempt, he can go up and down as many times as you want. He had the lowest value. Armia had a high value. He had a lower value than, say, Barron and Harris and all the other Gooley and all the other waiver eligible guys. So you put him down, you keep everyone up. You keep that money closest to the 4.4. I believe they lost out if what's his face on Twitter? What's his name? Something Sakic, Montreal, whatever. The capologist guy that's on there all the time. I refer to him. Sorry, man, I forget your name if you listen to the show. I forget your handle. But he said they only really lost out on $400,000 by doing it that way. According to Cap Friendly right now, Carey Price has been put on LTIR, but he's put on in-season LTIR, which means they can accumulate now that he's there. So if I have this right, last year they had issues bringing people up and putting them down because they didn't have enough money because Price went on preseason LTIR, and they couldn't accumulate. They didn't have enough money for bonuses and all this other stuff that they would have to pay for them to have for them coming up and down available. So that's why a lot of them were emergency call ups or whatever that is. This year, now they have pretty much 10.5 million that they can. All right, so now they don't really have to worry about playing with that. And it looks like Chris Weidman could be another guy that could go on LTI when Christian Dvorak comes back. I believe they technically could have waited until Dvorak came back to put Price on because I think they were cap compliant even with Price on injured reserve. But
True, but then he wouldn't be able to accumulate as much.
I don't know. I don't know how it works. So that's yeah. So but
I mean, they're not experts in the cap like Tampa Bay was, where they were $2 off. $2.
But yeah, and this way they don't get any next year. They won't have any penalties when they start the season.
No, because those carryover penalties for bonuses and whatnot will be paid out this year.
Correct. So that's why our Armia's up, Jack Eye's down. Don't be shocked. I know you're all big Armia fans and you want him on the team, killing those penalties and playing like Kucherov every 13.7 games of the 25 games he plays. Armia will be in Laval, and Jack Eye will be in the Montreal's roster tomorrow night.
Now, another contentious point with the roster that happened over the last couple of days was the Norlinder Barron competition. So I'm going to say it. I'll say it here. Yes, Norlinder did play better than Barron did, but it wasn't a competition between Norlinder and Barron. It never really was. This was a competition for Norlinder to try and supplant one of the many left-handed defensemen ahead of him, and he just couldn't do it. Whereas Barron, still third best right-handed defenseman they got right now.
I thought Mayu played better than Barron, but that's just me.
Yeah,
I thought he did, but I will admit I'd rather Mayu and Laval to get his games up and get his work on his defense before I throw him to the Wolves in Montreal. Although I do believe Mayu will be in Montreal at some point this year. I'm just hoping it's not till after Christmas, at least. But
that means the team's healthy.
That's right. That means the team's. But yeah, I agree. I wasn't a big fan of Justin Barron in the offseason. We've talked about this before. He's a bit of a slow starter. However, you're absolutely right. Unless Norlinder could play the right side, he wasn't winning a spot. Now Harris can play on the right side, but even if Harris plays on the right side, you got Jack Eye, Gooley, and Matheson, and Gooley and Matheson are set in stone. Nobody was pushing them out. Jack Eye, I think, was pretty set. I think Jack Eye's pretty set in stone too, even though he was put on paper wise, he was put on waivers.
Yeah.
And I think the reason saying that is he was quarterback in the power play on the second unit the whole preseason. And
when you're ripping wrist shots through the net, yeah, you're going to stay on a power play.
And I'm telling you, I was impressed with his offensive skill this preseason for Jack.
Yeah, he looked a little bit better there.
He looked better. He's skating better. He has that good shot. He doesn't hit it into the shin pads like Petrie used to do all the time. And, mind you, I thought Norlinder had a great preseason.
He did.
And if Matheson or Gooley or Harris go down, he's going to be the first call up. And you'll see him get regular minutes in the lineup. So, and good for him because I'll be honest, I had him written off. I thought he'd be playing in Europe all year, to be honest with you. So
me too. But the fact that he's stepped up, he's looking a lot better. He's looking more confident. The confidence is the big difference for him.
Yeah.
So he's making plays. He's taking chances. They pay off more often than they don't. But the fact that he's making those attempts, that's what he was missing. So he goes down to Laval, he plays well, he gets a call up, he plays well. Maybe another team looking for a young defenseman, they'll try and snap him up. Like he's not playing for the Canadiens per se. He's playing to earn that next contract. Because I don't see him cracking this roster at any point as a regular.
I think you're going to see one of your favorite left-handed defensemen moved at some point for a big deal that's going to get them a high offensive forward. Because if you break it down, either Matheson got to go in the next couple of years, which I think is possible. Goulie's there for life or until he whatever. So you got to look at Harris, you got to look at Struble, you got to look at Norlinder, you got to look at all these. Jack Eye's there, and I'll tell you why Jack Eye's there is because he is your prototypical bottom three or bottom pairing defenseman who can step up and play higher if he needs to be. Whereas you got a guy like Harris or Barron, if they're top four defensemen, you don't want to bury them on that bottom pair. So they're going to be coming up because when Blain Hudson comes in, Reinbacher, Mayu, and I mean, I love the fact that we're talking about this because under Bergevin, you could name 3 defensemen that you think are going to play in your top 4 for the future. Think about it. You're like, I don't know, Nathan Beaulieu. And now we're talking, we're going to have to get rid of some of these guys because you have way too many potential top 4 defensemen.
And then we have someone that we haven't even seen in Hudson, who's going to be jumping up into the mold at some point. We haven't been able to see him because of his NCAA eligibility, right? So
yeah, and that's why I think Matheson. He is. I mean, now Grant McKegg said he had 263 puck touches, and I'm starting to figure that math out. And somebody questioned it. And I kind of went, you know what? People count that, so I don't see it being wrong. But when the guy plays 31 friggin' minutes, and
everything goes through him.
He had the puck on a stick for an average of 4 minutes in the game. Puck on a stick for 4 minutes. That's a long friggin' time to have the puck on your stick in a hockey game. So I can see 263 touches.
And for our listeners, having actual puck control for more than a minute and a half in a full game is a lot. Like superstars in the NHL, game breakers, they'll have it for almost a minute or just over a minute in a game. That's where the puck is actually on the stick. That's a lot. So 4 minutes is almost unheard of.
Yeah. 263 puck touches is almost unheard of. But so your best trade bait is Matheson, Jordan Harris. Someone like 2 or 3 players on that left side got to go.
Yeah.
Not this year, but within the next couple of years.
Exactly. So, which brings me back to Norlinder. I just can't see him pushing his way past any of them. And by the time it's time to move any of them, there'll be other people like Hudson coming up, and there you go. It's replaced, and he's gone anyway. So he's really just playing to prove that he can be an NHLer at this point. The Canadiens will use that.
You also get William Trudeau, who's starting to play very, very well for Montreal.
That's correct.
But all you can hope for Mattias Norlinder now is that he plays well enough that you can sit there and go, look at this guy. He could be in your top 4. He's not going to fit into our top 4, but he can be in your top 4. We want at least a second-round pick for him. Or we're going to throw him and this guy and this guy. We want that guy, right?
Don't forget, there's still Adam Engstrom in the weeds as well.
Yeah.
That's another left-handed defenseman who looks like he's going to be an NHL player.
Who's that Russian guy who's tearing it up in the KHL? Is he left or right?
He's a right, I think.
He's a righty.
Is he a right? Yeah. So, I mean, right. I mean, I know people are pissed off with the drafting because of Reinbacher and that. But if you take a step back and look, Kent Hughes is drafting from the backside out.
He's drafting a specific type of player.
Correct. He has his defense. He thinks he has his goaltending in Fowler and Dobish.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. We'll see how Fowler does this year with Boston College, although he played very excellent in his first game.
Stole a win in his first game. Yeah.
Stole a win from the national champions. So you really, if you look at it that way, and he made a good point, it's easier to sign or trade for a high-scoring winger than it is for a top two defenseman. And so that's what they did. They drafted. They hopefully have their goalies of the future. They have the defense is there. It's there. Our defense we're going to have when we're contending is there. It just needs to be caught up to speed with the NHL. Now they're going to go out and try to build their offense around Suzuki and Caulfield, and hopefully Slafkovsky. But now, if they draft a defenseman in this draft and they have a chance to get one of the big three, then I'm done. I don't know what they're doing.
Well, that brings me to a question. What is a successful season? Is it the Canadiens fighting for a playoff spot? Is it the youth taking a step forward and bringing the rebuild to the next step and picking, say, around 10 to 15? Or is it the whole team sucks ass and you get to pick in the top three? Like what's success?
To me, I think it's the young guys taking that step forward. I think they are going to pick 10 to 15. I really do. Unless there's a shit ton of injuries like last year, or Montembeault and Allen really shit the bed, which is possible because they weren't that great in the preseason. But to me, it's just seeing the young guys take that step forward, seeing Slafkovsky maybe hit 15 goals, maybe 40 points. Caulfield playing around with that 50 goal marker. Suzuki hitting maybe 80 points. Doc doing his thing and maybe him getting 70. You know what I mean? That's what I want to see. I don't care where we really finish. I'm not expecting a playoffs. I'm not expecting a whatever. If they can do all that and we can still get a top 5 pick, then it's a win-win. Right? I like to see the defense take that step forward, like Caden Gooley and Harris and Barron and Jack-Eye look better, play better defense, play better offensively. So if all these guys are going to improve and everything's going to move up, how can you not be, I see the Canadiens getting around 80 points this year. Wherever that puts them, I don't know, but that's where I see them getting about 80 points.
Yeah, I see them around 85-ish points. So we're looking at like 15 to 20 point jump, but that doesn't mean they're going to climb up the standings very much, if at all. Like they still, to me, are one of the bottom two teams, if not the bottom team in the Atlantic.
Detroit depends on Detroit. Depends on how well Detroit plays this year.
Exactly.
So, Matt, you're quiet.
Matt, what about you?
You gotta get in here. You haven't really said much.
I'm thinking for the youth to grow, as Treg said. However, doing it in a winning way, in a winning culture, is going to do so much more for them and for their confidence, as opposed to saying like, okay, Cole Caulfield broke 40 goals, but they were one of the worst teams in the league, right? Like individual stats, I don't believe are the way to go here. And I don't believe that you look at anyone on this roster and say that they're there for themselves. I think it'll go a lot further if we see that sort of development with a team that gets out of the gate early and throws some wins up there, and they might not make the playoffs, but having that competitiveness and being able to take that next step and being able to have some close games against some of these better teams, especially within their own division, I think is going to show a lot of growth. My main concern is their special teams, because that really can make or break how many how many points throughout the season. We know that they have the weapons to use a guy like Caulfield with a bomb of a shot on the power play. It's just when he's gonna like, it's setting up and actually making the power play work. And then the same thing with the penalty kill, right? It's a lot of who knows at this point, and I think that's really one of their weak. It's their weakest. It's the weakest thing about this team right now. And if we go through another season of 25 or below on the power play and PK, then somebody behind the bench has to go. Let's just say that.
Well,
Now
they are talking
Martin,
about taking that next step with the power play. They're going to
Martin
actually work
St.
on it now.
Martin St. Louis did say on the antechamber that last year they didn't really work on their special teams. They just worked on
Yeah.
5-on-5 because they really didn't care. They said, we didn't plan on really going anywhere. We weren't worried about the 5-on-5. We knew our defense was young. I think this was antechamber. I think that's what St. Louis said this on. He said, so this year they're really going to look at their special teams and work on it. And he said he makes the decisions just as much as Alec Burrows does on who plays in the power play and how the power play goes. So, and this is what I like about Martin St. Louis. See, he goes, so I'm just as accountable for whether it fails or not as Andrew Burnett is.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's him protecting Andrew Burnett, which I think it is, or if it's him just saying, hey, you can shit on our special teams all you want, but there's a reason they were so shitty. It's because we didn't give a shit, because we really didn't give a shit about them last year.
Yeah. I'm thinking a healthy Mike Matheson and having Caulfield back, I think is going to do wonders. And something that stood out for me during the preseason was Nick Suzuki winning faceoffs.
Yeah.
Right.
And not just a little.
Yeah. Not having to rely as much on bringing a guy in like Monahan to win these draws is going to do wonders for them. It's nice to have Monahan out there. I think that he provides that great second option. And for a power play guy, he's not that bad either because he can play the center of the wing. However, puck possession matters at the end of the day. And if Suzuki's their best is their best center, I'd like to see him take that next step. And so far during the preseason, he was a standout for them. And I think he put up 7 points in the preseason. And you keep him healthy, you keep Caulfield healthy, you keep Matheson healthy, and be able to possess the puck on the power play and come up with some sort of system. I say Caulfield's at least a 40-goal scorer, if not 50.
So Suzuki was winning over 60% of the draws in the preseason, which is about 10% or 12% higher than his regular average. So either
even if he can be
everybody sucked, or
if he can be a 53 to 55 guy, like, it's
that would be impressive.
It's a big jump. Now, if we can get Doc to do the same thing, and we're starting to make those advancements, right?
Now for me, a successful season is now, how are you performing in the games? How are you winning and losing the games? Last year, it was just about, let's put on a good show and maybe we'll be competitive. This year, I want to see teams have to work their asses off to beat the Canadiens. The Canadiens have to show that they're a tough out. Now, they may lose more games than they likely will lose more games than they win, but they have to make it hard on the other teams to show that they can compete in every single game. They can steal some wins, and sometimes it takes a lucky bounce to have them to beat them. So if they can do that over the length of the season, to me, that'll be a successful season.
Yep.
They're not going to make the playoffs, in my opinion. Like Trege, I believe they're going to be around 10 to 15 in the draft, and that's fine. Now, they're the second youngest team in the NHL as of right now. That's quite a bit, and they're expected to play a little bit better than they did last year when they were older.
Yep.
Caden Gooley thinks they're an underdog, and they've got that kind of mentality. So we might see a team come out of the gate really, really battling. Like last year, they were about 500 up until mid-November when the wheels fell off with injuries.
That's when the
Maybe if
bus
they don't get
accident happened and everyone got hurt.
yeah, pretty much. But this year, if you don't have everybody getting hurt at once, we might see a team that's actually, within a few points of a playoff spot throughout the year. It's like just out of their reach, but it's there.
Yeah.
So, and here's the issue you're going to have on Twitter. And here's the issue. Because
God.
you still have the tank commanders. You still have the guys who are like, oh, well, we can get
Celebrini or Iserman
Celebrini or
Demidov
Iserman or Demidov and all this stuff. Oh, we're wasting another
shiny.
draft because we're going to be
shiny.
drafting. But Zach Benson dropped to 13
And he just made
last year.
Yeah, and he made the roster.
Cole Caulfield dropped to 15 when he was drafted by Montreal. Yeah, they're not going to get one of the top three. And you know what? If injuries happen like they did last year, maybe they do get one of the top three. This is all injury dependent. Now that we have a new doctor, because the guy that was around since 1922 is retired, and with the new trainers, which we all know is going to make the huge difference, the new trainers, because they're the ones that kept them on the ice. Oh, they're fine. They're good. They're good. It's just a bruise. Here's a little Robitussin, and you'll be all right. So if they can stay healthy, last year I think they were 5 goals away from averaging 3 goals a game. That's Cole Caulfield by himself. Really, if you think about it. Their issue last year wasn't scoring, it was keeping the puck out of the net. That was their issue really last year, I think, in my opinion.
Well, they were 26th in the NHL in goals, which, that's not good.
It's not good, but
they were worse on defense by far.
Yes. I think they were 28 or 29 on defense, I think.
29.
Something like that.
Yeah.
29.
Now,
if everyone
a healthy
improves,
year would improve that.
But if everyone improves, like we hope they improve, if their special teams improve, how can they not? How can they not? The only thing that's going to keep them from moving up is the fact that other teams improved. That's it. So if they get 80 points and they finish in the bottom 5, I'm still kind of happy because I'm like, well, they did everything they could do. Right? Like they can't help it. They can't help it if Philadelphia and Anaheim and Chicago all get better too. Right? So they can only really do that. My only concern with that is is like what Matt said, the winning culture. So yeah, we're winning, but we're not getting anywhere. It's like spinning your tires and not moving. But I don't think anyone on that team expects them to make the playoffs or go anywhere. So I think they
for it. They're going to put in the effort.
Well, I mean, we all play sports. No one sits there and goes, "Oh, well, we suck. Let's just go." Everyone goes, "You know what? Let's just play our ass off. You never know what's going to happen." Which is true.
Yeah.
But I don't see a playoffs.
If the Canadiens do end up, say, between 10 and 15, and they end up with a Maxime Massé, the goal-scoring right winger out of the QMJHL, so you got yourself another goal scorer. You got a local kid and a kid with size. So everybody should be happy, right? Right?
No, because it wasn't the top 3. It wasn't Michkov.
What about Demidov?
It wasn't Michkov. He's a point per game player in the KHL. He's amazing.
Wasn't who was it? Nigel Dawes? He was an over a point per game player there too.
I bring that up all the time. Chris Weidman was the top defenseman in the KHL before he came to Montreal. So, like, I get what everyone's saying. Oh, I don't think the KHL, in my opinion, is like a top league. I think the SHL, the AHL are better leagues than the KHL. I honestly do.
I think the Swiss league is better than the KHL.
I don't know about that, but because if you can get a guy like Nigel Dawes, who admittedly is a very good AHL player, very good, but can't play in the NHL. Now, Michkov has enough skill; he will be successful in the NHL. Is he going to be a 100-point guy with 70 goals and all this bullshit at 5'8" and an average skater in the NHL? I highly doubt it.
Not a top. If you're not an excellent skater at that size, you can't. You're not going to be a top line player.
And that's what I'm saying. And I mean, everyone looks at him dangling and doing all this stuff in the KHL, but the KHL does not have NHL caliber players. I'm sorry, but they don't. Um, I think he's going to be a good, maybe 60, 70 point guy, maybe a 30 goal scorer,
30 goal.
maybe.
Yep.
I
Mostly power
yeah,
play, I think.
for sure. Power play. And I mean, he has the offensive talent, he has
Yep.
the deeks, he has the shot. I'm not taking away from him, but I don't think he's this. I don't see him as this elite player in the NHL. I just don't see it. And it's basically due to his size and the fact that he's not that great of a skater for his
And
size.
I go back to the fact that he's an undersized winger who can maybe score goals. Well, this year, according to Daily Faceoff, the prediction is Cole Caulfield, a 5'7" undersized winger, is looking to be a 50 goal scorer. That's his prediction. So
But Cole
you
Fowley is a
need
better
another,
skater.
yeah. Do you need another undersized winger, or did you need that? You know, like I know you're supposed to BPA, but how many small players can you really have on a roster and be competitive?
Well, depends. Is BPA the best player available, or is BPA the best player available of what you want to draft? Montreal went in wanting to draft a defenseman. End of
Well,
conversation.
judging by the video, they debated fairly heavily on this,
They did.
and they
They
had
did.
too many question marks on Michkov.
And before anyone does anything, you guys watched the 30-second clip and made up your minds that everyone unanimously just sat down at the table and said, it's Reinbacher. I really don't think that's how it went. I really think they kind of went back and forth on a lot of players. And then they went, well, you know what, boys? This is our plan. This is the way we want to do it. Who's our guy? Personally, I wanted Ryan Leonard. That's who I wanted them to draft.
Yeah,
In
me
my
too.
personal
Me
opinion,
too.
I think he's going to turn out to be like a Tag Thompson type player. And that's who I wanted.
Now,
Now, everyone's going on about Zach Benson, another small forward, but guess what? Zach Benson's a hell of a goddamn skater. So he can get away by being that small. And that's the difference between him and Michkov. And I think that's another reason Michkov fell to Philadelphia and didn't get drafted by, say, um, who took Similac? Who took the defenseman there after Montreal?
Arizona.
Arizona. So hate me all you want for not being a Michkov lover. I don't think he's going to be an elite player. I think he could be a top 6 player on a team. I think he's going to be a 30 goal scorer in the NHL. I think he could get 60, 70 points, maybe as high as 80. But I don't think he's going to be an elite player in the NHL.
now to finish off the show, the last question I'm going to ask you guys. I'm going to start with Matt. Call ups. Who is your first call up for a forward and a defenseman?
I'd say Emil Heineman for forward. I think that he just played too well, and I think that he brings things to the team that even on a bottom 6 role that some of these other guys don't bring. I just think that he's got that shot, and when he utilizes it and can actually hit the net, I think it's very good. He's decent defensively, and he plays the body, which is something that is always important. For a defenseman, let me take a look really quick. I want to say I want to just jump in and say Logan Mailloux, but I'm not 100% sure there. There might be someone that might deserve it a little bit more. But that's who I'm going to go with for now. I'll go with Mailloux. But if they're just looking to fill a hole, if they're looking to just fill a hole because there's an injury, just call up Gustav Lidstrom. That's what they brought him in for.
Yeah. What about you, Treg?
Heidemann for sure, the forward side. And I'm going to go with Lindstrom just for the simple fact that if they call a guy up, especially with Barron probably being the 7th defenseman right now, it's going to be Lindstrom just so they have a guy to sit in the press box and throw in whenever they need him. Now, late in the season, We're talking after Christmas. I'm going to go with Joshua Waugh and Logan Mayu. That's who I think
Yeah,
will be their
yeah.
call-ups.
If they're playing really well down there, they're going to
Yeah.
get they're going to get the reward. You know, the carrot. They're dangling
Yeah.
that carrot. They'll get a couple NHL games, and then they'll go back down because Laval is expected to really compete for the championship this year. They've made the playoffs the last couple of years, and now they've got all this depth, all kinds of young players coming up, solid veterans. So a lot is expected out of them, which makes sense. Your minor league team should get really good before the NHL team does. You want them to compete for a championship so that they learn how to play together and compete for that when they move up. For me, I agree with you guys on forward. I think it's Heineman. I think he earned his spot, but because of the fact that he's waiver exempt and Ylonen wasn't, they kept Ylonen. And Heineman, despite having a great camp, he could use a little bit more seasoning for North American game because we saw him incorporate the physicality in the preseason, whereas last season at the end of the year he really didn't have that. So if he has a little bit more time to let that simmer, I think he'll be once he gets his call up. I don't think he's going back.
Who, Heineman?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think he's going to be the RHP of last year.
yeah.
Maybe not be as successful at the NHL level, but I
Call
think
up and stay kind of thing.
once he's called up, he stays. Especially after the trade deadline, when you see people move in and out. So
yeah, especially someone like Pearson who's going to be moved at the deadline for whatever
Monahan.
they get. And Pearson plays a game that Heineman will be playing. You know, he's a big, although this is Pearson in his youth, not now.
Yeah.
Big, fast, can shoot, hit and take the body. That's Heineman. So that makes sense there. On defense, I'm going to go with Trudeau. I thought he had another really good camp. He's a steady defenseman whose offense is a little bit underappreciated because the guy can really move the puck well, especially on that first pass out of the zone. So I can see him getting the first call up on D.
I like that pick too. I thought Trudeau was on my mind for that. I just see. I agree with Matt. I just see Lindstrom just because he's the guy that they can just throw out there when they want him and keep him in the press box when they don't need him, and they don't really care about what happens to him really. Which is why I'm kind of shocked he was put down to begin with and not Barron, just because of the waivers and the fact that he is a guy that can sit in the press box. So, yeah.
All right. So final thoughts. Treg, your final thoughts.
I just want to tell everyone, Susie had her surgery. The stuff was taken off her. Everything's good. There's no cancer. There's no anything that on her. She gets her stitches out on Thursday, and she's back to being an asshole. So everything's pretty good. Back to normal. Everything's pretty good. She's actually right there. There's Susie.
She's taking a break from being an asshole.
That or she's planning her next asshole thing to do, and it's really cute because
that makes sense.
She has a cone that we usually have on her, so she doesn't lick her paws, and she tries to, be an asshole, and I just hold her cone like this and say, "Ha, you can't do anything." But anyway, that's the way it is, and that's all I really got to say. That's it. No joke.
Matt, what about you? Good.
Damn, I had a joke. No, just kidding. It was not appropriate though. Nothing new with me. Just been working lots and finally got a little bit of downtime. Looking forward to the season starting and pucks and deep, all that shit, right? So that's about all I got to say.
Yeah, and so for me, I'm on the Montreal now. We're super busy. We're doing what's called a tiered readiness program, which is supposed to take 18 months, but we've condensed that into 6 so that we could be ready for a deployment in less than 6 months. So, yeah, we're doing a lot of things all at once. So it's taking up a lot of my time, considering I've got to run a department. So, I'm going to be in and out. We might miss a few shows here and there, but we're not disappearing. And finally, if you're looking to buy some Pride tape, go check out pridetape.com. Let's see. Yeah, pridetape.com. If you want to put some pride tape on your sticks or your baseball bats or cross sticks, whatever, go there. Because the NHL might be a bunch of wusses, but I'm not afraid of a rainbow. So that's it for the show.
I just keep thinking of the Care Bears. I don't know why. And the rainbow stare.
Scary. So scary. It would be, honestly, it would be kind of scary if it was a Care Bear stare, but with cocaine bears.
Great movie, by the way. If you haven't seen it, go watch that movie. It's a good movie. It actually is pretty good. But also, I just want to say my TikTok now. I'm doing sort of my journey here in bodybuilding and that. If anyone wants to go over it, I'm also giving advice on stuff about like vitamins and that to take and all that kind of stuff. So,
remember, ladies, it's not safe for work.
It is. I have a shirt on almost every video. So
almost.
So there.
All right. So I just want to thank everybody for their patience. Thank you for tuning in. We really appreciated all the messages and the emails while we were on our hiatus because of work. There was some concern that we were disappeared. We were maybe kidnapped by a Toronto Maple Leaf show or something. No, that's not true. We're fine. We're alive. We're safe. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And remember,